Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Cornerstone's weekly Torah Parashah service for today, where we use a Midrash style service of discussion, which makes it very interesting. If anyone watching online would like to get the worksheet where we have the questions that you'll see during the middle of the week, just go to our website and there's an info email there, and just write that on there. Write your name and your email address and that you would like to receive the weekly parashahs. That way you could study them ahead of time. And historically they usually go out on Wednesday. A couple times they haven't, but historically they have. And in that way you can join along with us, because you can also join the live stream. And you can leave comments. We have Tim up in the booth who's monitoring those now. And so you can leave comments there as well. All right. Having said all that, let's start. If we could all rise. We're going to do Torah Parashah number 6, which is Toldot. It's Bereshit 25:19 through 28:9. And first the blessing before the reading of the Torah. Barku et Yahweh HaMivarak. Baruch Yahweh HaMivarak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Yahweh HaMivarak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Yahweh Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bakar Banu Mikol Ha'amin Ve'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Yahweh Baruch Shemo Notain HaTorah. Amen. And today's Torah reading will be from Bereshit 25, verse 19 through 26, verse 5. And at people's request, I'm starting to work back in pictures of the Middle East. That's at Wadi Rum. I took that picture. And the reason why I stopped was because I went through my entire collection of photos. And then another very famous author from over there, got to know her when I was in Jordan. And she posted all her pictures online, so I've gone through all those too. And I didn't want to bore you with repeats, but by golly, we're going to start doing them again, okay? And that's very close to where this story takes place, is Wadi Rum, very close. Okay, now we do need a reader. And feel free to use your own Bible translation as you read on the microphone. Otherwise, you could also come up and just read right off of the screen here. Do I have a volunteer? Miranda, I see a hand up over there. It's a little dark over there because we're going to replace that light bulb this next week there.
I'll try to read this one. And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian of Padan Aram, the sister to Laban the Syrian. And Isaac entreated Yehovah for his wife because she was barren, and Yehovah was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her, and she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of Yehovah. And Yehovah said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red all over like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was threescore years old when she bare them. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And Jacob sawed pottage. And Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore his name was called Edom. And Jacob said, Sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, Behold, I am at the point to die. What profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he swore unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright, and there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And Jehovah appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swore unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my Torah.
Thank you. Very good. And now the blessing after the reading of the Torah. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata betachenu. Baruch atah Yahweh Baruch Shemo Notain HaTorah. Amen. Now in English. Blessed are you, Yahweh, our Elohim, King of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth and planted everlasting life within us. Blessed are you, Yahweh. Bless his name, giver of the Torah. Amen. Okay, you can go on ahead and be seated. Now, this picture I did not take, but for those of you who remember when we were going through some of the priestly garments for the high priest, and it talked about the purple, they found some purple dyed garment that was still in existence. And they found it in this area here in one of the old settlements where they were doing the dig. And it was in, if I remember right, it's part of Israel. I think it was Egypt, but I think it was part of Israel. But that's what that terrain looks like. It's very barren. So this week's parsha outline, we start off with the birth of Esau and Yaakov, or Jacob. And then Esau, as we read, sells his birthright. And then we have Yahweh's promise to Yitzhak, or Isaac. And then Yitzhak and Abimelech. And then Yitzhak blesses Yaakov. And then Yaakov sent to Laban. And then Esau marries an Ishmaelite. Okay, a lot going on, a lot of history going on here. A lot of foundational, this is a continuation of the foundational setting for all the different races that set up the ancient geopolitical situation in the Middle East, and that we are still being affected directly by today, especially when I was over there in Jordan. They were very aware of all of this stuff, and it's very prevalent to them. We don't hear much about it in Oregon, but it is very much there. Today's parsha questions, as you ponder them, looking out over the sands of the Arabia, which is what my daughter's doing there, actually, is where is Yeshua in this account? And then how is this relevant to us today? And again, it's neat to read these stories, get a cute little warm fuzzy, and then go on, or are we supposed to be learning and applying these today? This is, to me, this is extremely relevant. This is not just ancient history. Let's go do something else that's more interesting. Okay. We'll start off with anybody had any observations from reading through this Torah section. We've got a bunch of questions on here, which are fun. But again, let's start off with what everybody else has. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's a parallel here.
Ooh.
Yeah, different wife, different king, same story. She's my sister. And I'm reading that and just going, okay, well, that's what you did back then, I guess. Well, just tell everybody she's your sister. And once again, they're sent away and blessed as they're sent away, and then meets again to bless them again and make an oath between the Philistines and Jacob. And also the harsh kind of betrayal is what touched me a lot when he was going blind and between Esau and Jacob, the swapping of the blessing and stuff. It's just, to me, that's just, oh my gosh. No, it's no wonder to me why the peoples of those nations are so black and white, and they operate the way they do. That's the way Yahweh operated. You're in, you're out.
Yeah.
And nothing could be changed. So that was a very profound thought. That put a lot of thoughts. So I'm looking forward to people kind of straightening out what happened to me when I read this. But I thought it was kind of interesting to begin on the same note of an earlier passage.
Yep. Abraham's behavior passed right down to Yitzhak. And Abraham was kind of, sort of could say it because it was his half-sister. But Isaac has got absolutely no excuse. Yeah, he just does the same thing. Same result, like you said, too. Yeah. Good point. Anybody else? I'm looking. Oh, there's a hand up over there.
Yes, it's just a really important comment. What did the herdsmen of Gerar say when they saw Isaac coming? Well, well, well. So,
That's cute. That's cute. I've never heard that one before. That's really good. Yeah, I've been down in that area where I think several people have here, where Yitzhak was digging the wells, in the Beersheba area, and the sevens, Shavah is 7, but you've got that whole area down there, and let me tell you, it looks a lot like that in the outlying areas, unless they were able to drill down and bring the water up. It's very, very dry. You're really on the edge of kind of Israel. After that, it's desert, all the way down to the Red Sea, down there at Aqaba and stuff, Eilat. Yeah.
What I found interesting about that was that Abraham had dug those wells, but they came along and stopped them up. And I don't know why or what that has, but they stopped all those wells up. And you'd think in a desert place like that, they'd want as many as possible. But for some reason, they stopped them up.
That is a good question, yeah.
I was wondering the same thing. So Aleph Beta said that it was because it was like how'd they say it? It was like showing permanence, like he was permanently dwelling. He wasn't being a sojourner in the land like his father was. So it was, in a way, it was like an act of disobedience, but then to Yahweh. But then later, he up and moved around, and so then he was showing obedience to that sojourning. But then I was just about to look up the word behind it to find out, was he really dwelling? Like, is there a difference in the wording between dwelling and what kind of camp he was setting up there? So.
Well, sometimes too, if anybody studied hunter-gatherer societies, as well as shepherd-type societies, and like anthropology and stuff like that, they do move around, but they'll move around like 2 or 3 times a year, because even they know they're going to exhaust the resources in one area, and so they'll be here for the spring. They do cattle ranches and stuff in the United States. You have the spring pastures, you have the summer pasture, then you move them into winter pasture. That type of thing is what I suspect was going on. Yeah.
Yes, no, even in the West, in America, where the cattle ranchers hated sheep herders, because the sheep take the grass down to nothing.
Right.
So when the sheep would move through, it would take a full year for that grass to recover. Cows don't take it down to the nub. Or
Cows graze very different.
So that was the thing, and you had to move those sheep constantly.
That was very good. Joseph, when he was looking for his brothers, remember, his brothers had been moving the sheep around from different pastures. And I remember when we were over there, you could stand up on a hillside, and it looks, again, brown. Sorry, hate to say that, but just brown. And then every once in a while, you could look way over and you could see a green patch. And it was just a little patch on the horizon. And it would make sense that's right where you would go, and then graze it out and then move on to the next one and the next one. So, yeah, it's a very interesting lifestyle. A lot of people in Jordan still do it, actually. But the government's trying to get them all into cities, and a lot of them don't like it. At least when I was there. It's been a while. Anybody else? Oh, I see a hand up in the back. And then Barbara. Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
In California, it's not brown, it's California gold.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. The Golden Gate, yeah, California Gold, I remember that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Let's see. Hang on. Is that? Yeah. Okay. I just kind of had a couple of comments on the fact that a lot of times we try to take the promises of God by human effort instead of just waiting for the promises, and then you can see that with the story. So Isaac was already promised that, you know, Jacob was promised that he would get the blessings, or that the older would serve the younger before he was even born. And it's interesting that they go through this whole ordeal, Rivka and Jacob, to steal the blessing. But then if you read the next chapter they still bless him on his way to go find a wife with Laban, which is kind of interesting. So they went through that whole thing to deceive Isaac, but then Isaac still ends up blessing him again right before he leaves. So it's kind of interesting that they did all that, and it seems like almost for nothing.
Yeah, the story of Jacob and Esau is huge. This is one of those really big stories. All the way from when, before they're conceived, as she was reading, because she was barren. So here's another miracle birth that the Lord does, which is always amazing. He does so many of them in Scripture, it's just amazing. All the way up to the two nations and the two nations today. The story is huge. There are so many currents, so many things to learn from it. It's brought up in 1,500 years later in Scripture, and then Yeshua talked about it also. And that was 2,000 years ago almost for us. And it's still prevalent today. This is a really big story. Yeah. It's hard, we won't get it all in today. There's no way, there's just too much to it. But it is a huge, huge story. Anybody else? Okay. Well, in 25:23, Rebecca or Rivka in the Hebrew is told by Yahweh, the elder shall serve the younger. What did he mean? And, does this occur in other biblical narratives? If so, where? I did some research on this too, because a couple of them came to mind really, really fast. Okay? And then I found a couple that someone else had found, and I went, I didn't think about that, but that is a very good point, so I wrote them all down. Okay? First off, why would this be a point to be made? What normally would happen?
Well, normally the elder gets the double portion and carries on. He's responsible for the family, basically. So he's the leader of the household. Once the father dies, he takes the father's place.
Correct. That's the firstborn. So let's say Jacob had 12 sons and a daughter, right? Okay. So the first one was Reuben. Okay, Reuben, if Jacob's estate had been split up, it would have split up between 13 portions. 12 to the boys, one each, and then Reuben would have get the 13th portion, a double. And that extra portion is not to make him richer. He's supposed to use that to help take care of the whole family, the whole tribe. That's the responsibility that Darren's talking about. It is still done today in the Middle East. It is huge in the Arab culture. It is everything in the Arab culture. Oh my goodness, it is huge, okay? In the West, we've given up a lot of that. Not all of it, but a lot of it. So it's very unusual to skip the oldest and drop down the pecking order until you get to where you are. It's unusual, which is why the Lord's mentioning it. Don't worry about that. This is a prophecy. This is what's going to happen, okay? The elder is going to serve the younger. So Rivka gets this warning. I've always wondered when Isaac found out about it, because we read about it, but how long before, I don't know. It's just real interesting to me. So, where else in Scripture does this happen? I just mentioned one. Okay. Hang on, we have microphone runners? Yeah. No, go ahead.
There was Ephraim, he was the younger one also, then Manasseh. Those were the two sons of Joseph.
Yep. Yep.
And those were two different nations, just like Yaakov and Esau. And Yaakov had more of a heart to follow the Torah, even though he was a tent dweller. And he had more respect for his father, Abraham, than Esau did. And Esau was more driven. He was a hunter. He preferred to do everything that he wanted to do that was interested in him, which was totally separate from what Yahweh wanted him to do. And so, yeah, he reaped bad benefits in the life that he led. So
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so Manasseh and Ephraim. Jacob's really old. He gets to go back to Egypt, finds out Joseph's alive. This is the story she's talking about. I'm giving a little refresh here. And then finally he gets to meet the two boys. And then Joseph, of course, wants his dad to bless them. That's very important. So instead of doing it this way, he crossed his hands. But remember, he was kind of hard of sight. So Joseph goes, oh, after the boys, no, Dad, that's backwards. He goes, no, son, I know what I'm doing. The younger is going to be ruling, he's going to be greater than the elder. And that's what happened. Ephraim was the dominant tribe in the northern kingdom of Israel. Remember, northern kingdom, southern kingdom. The whole thing is called the whole house of Israel, but it's split up. In the south, it was called Judah because that was the dominant tribe, but it wasn't the only tribe down there. In the north, it wasn't Manasseh, it was Ephraim. So a lot of times when you see the prophecies and the stories in the Tanakh or the Old Testament, it's talking about Ephraim, it's talking about the northern kingdom. But that was a prophecy also. Very good spot there. And Esau, we got a hand up here, Craig, with a mic. Esau did not have a heart for Yahweh, is really the simplest way I can put it. And the Lord knew that. And he knew that Jacob would, even though he did it in a flawed way, he would stick to the God of Israel as he became the God, that Yahweh that they were worshiping, and to work with keeping the covenants. Esau was all over the board. Yeah.
I thought of two, but I thought of David or Joseph because of his brothers. He's the youngest, and he served the oldest bow down to him.
That was in Joseph's dreams, right?
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's exactly one of them also.
And then I thought of one, but I don't know if it kind of applies, but Cain and Abel, going back to Genesis. That's good.
Yep. Cain and Abel. That one they took into their own hands when he slew him. He wasn't supposed to do that. Yep. So you have Joseph, because he had the dream where all the bows were bowing down, including his parents even too. But yeah, that was the younger was picked out by the Lord to save the tribe and be the leader. You're exactly right. Very good point. What was the other one you said at the beginning? Did you say David? Yeah. Think of the story of David. So Samuel, the seer and a prophet, he was more of a seer really, but so Samuel is bemoaning the fact that the kingdom is going to be ripped from King Saul. And the Lord shows up and says, dude, why are you worrying about this? Come on, I got another guy. He's good to go. You're going to go down to Jesse's place down in the Bethlehem area. And he goes, meets all the boys. And he just is like going down the pecking order. I forget how many brothers he had. Was it 6? I think it was 6, something like that. But he meets the one, and you could see Samuel just going, Lord, is this the one? Nope, not. Oh, that's odd. That's the oldest. Goes all the way down the order. Nothing. And then he asks, oh, you got any more boys? Oh, yeah, I got my little David. He's out in the field. Goes out to him. Boom, that's the one. So the younger wound up ruling over the elders. There's another very good example there. And David had a hand up there.
You just answered my question, so.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. So the Lord will do this, but it's not all the time. Now, let me go down my little list here. Okay, I got 2 more. I got 6. I didn't know there was that many.
Judah.
Huh?
Judah took the place of Reuben.
Got that. Okay. Here's an interesting one. What about Peretz? Or Peretz, we would say. He's one of David's progenitors, his ancestors. Okay. And remember his son Judah, right? He had all these boys. He's marrying them off to this one gal, and the boys keep dropping dead. And he's got a 3rd son. And she said, well, are you going to let me marry your 3rd son? Well, when he's of age. And then he doesn't do it. Okay, I'm trying to remember her name. What was her name? Was it Tamar? Yeah, huh? Tamar. Okay, good. So Tamar says, look, I want a boy. I want a baby. So she dresses up like a concubine, waits for her father-in-law to go by. She dresses up a little veil and goes, hey, sailor, new in town. And he goes, woohoo. And he goes and he lies with her, but he doesn't have any money, so he leaves his staff and his signet ring and stuff. And he lies with her, and not knowing who she is, and she gets pregnant. And then later on, she pops up in camp pregnant, and he's going to kill her because she was being unfaithful. And then she returned his staff and signet ring, and he realized what he had done. She gave birth to 2 boys. Okay, and one of them stuck his hand out because who's coming out first? They put the red little like a string, string or thread or ribbon around the hand. Then the hand came back out, back into the womb, and then the other child came out, and then Peretz came out with that, and the midwife knew which one had it, but it was technically the younger because he wasn't born; he just stuck his hand out. So the order was reversed. And the last one was interesting. Think about Rachel and Leah. Rachel was the younger, and Jacob fell in love with her, wanted to marry her, and then Laban says, no, we don't do that, so he switched them on the wedding night. But there was the older serving the younger. So I thought that was an interesting one there. I hadn't thought about that. I went, oh, you're right.
Can I add one to that?
Say what?
I was just thinking of Messiah serving his family too. His younger brothers were served by the older brother.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. So in 29 to 34, does Jacob steal the birthright from Esau? I bring this up on purpose because later on Esau says he did.
No.
No.
He did not. No way.
He
That
did
was
not.
a deal they made.
He sold it to him.
Now I want to make a comment on that. I think it was underhanded of Jacob to do that.
That's what everybody debates. That's the whole
That's the
big thing.
the big debate, because your brother's, he's out there, he's hungry, you got food, and you don't freely offer it. You sell it, So I think about me and my brother, and if I had food, there's no way I would charge him for food, out of love for my brother. So I do think it was underhanded of Jacob to do that. But it was not stolen.
Well, there was an interesting point brought up. I read something that a rabbi in Israel had brought up on this point, that you don't usually, if you're that tired and hungry, you don't usually get right up and leave after you eat. You fall asleep. At least I do. Anyway, that was one of the points made. Number 2, Esau knew that nothing was going to take place for several hundred years after he was perished. I mean, he would have been gone. He didn't care. It's like somebody telling me I'm going to inherit a nation 400 years from now. And wow, great, I'll be long gone. So it was belittled in Esau's mind that whatever, I get a good meal. And my rights, well, what of it? I thought that was an interesting point.
It is a very good point, yeah. It just seems like Esau had very little regard for the birthright. And that means the promises that were given to Abraham, okay? Plus you also have the worship of Yahweh, okay? And preserving the family and the family morals. It seems like, especially when you see who Esau married later on. At first he towed the line and then he said, yeah, whatever. And so then he went all over the place, marrying all women from all sorts of tribes that he was not supposed to be marrying at all.
The Lord knew ahead of time, he knows in the end from the beginning, who is going to follow his laws and what's going to happen. And these two were totally different right off of the bat from the birth.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of camaraderie between these two, I imagine, all the way up through, because as it said, the one was more or less, he wanted to be around the house and study, and he was probably in the scriptures and following that. But the other one, being he was the man's boy, so to speak,
Yeah.
he was out in the wild hunting, and they were totally two different characters, totally two different nations.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very different type of people. Yes. Oh, thank you, Craig.
So 27, verse 36, and Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Yaakov? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and now look, he has taken away my blessing." Do we say that he did steal the blessing then?
I don't know, did he? Let's see, he and his mom it was actually his mother's idea. And, he went along with it, of course, but, they did the whole fake skinning stuff and stuff like that. And then he goes in there one day, and she fixed the meal because she knew what Isaac liked. Every wife knows their husband's favorite meal. Okay, so Esau's out, quick, let's make it really fast. And yeah, they totally deceived Isaac on that one. Yes, they did. And he got that blessing of the firstborn.
Yeah, she did say, "Let it be on me." She said, let the curse fall on me, or what did she say exactly? But something like that. But then I was wondering, and this may be just a wild thought, you can correct me, but so just like Rebecca was brought into Sarah's tent, and then she became the head matriarch, so then would the curse go down that line then and then fall on Rachel or Leah, both of them, really, in a way?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Well, I believe the curse did fall on her. That was the last time she saw her son. She was deprived of that son that she loved so much by doing that.
That's a good point. Yeah, and also Rachel was barren for a while too, just like she was. It took her a while before she could conceive. The Lord had to intervene there also. But it's interesting later on, because when Esau realizes what happens, he basically says that Jacob stole the birthright from him, and he didn't. He sold it flat out. And when in a situation where he despised it, and I looked up that word despised, it really means despise. There's no despise, disdain, contempt, think to scorn, a vile person. This is what he did to the birthright. And the birthright, whoever holds that, it's completely an opposite position you're supposed to be in. It's like when you're a dad. You're supposed to think everything for your family and to take care of them, and just like a husband does to his wife. Esau, you're supposed to do that to the whole tribe, which sometimes there are 10, 12,000 people. Esau had the exact opposite. Yeah.
So that has carried on to this day.
Yes.
The sons of Esau despise the fact that Jacob has the birthright.
Yes, they're still fighting over it, and Esau does, and Ishmael. They're both extremely relevant. It was very well explained to me by Muslim Arabs in Jordan as we're sitting there. They knew all this stuff, and everything is in there. Yes, they don't like the fact that Jacob got the birthright. They want the land and the promises. Okay, if you read the Quran, it says Ishmael went up with Abraham to Mount Moriah, not Isaac. Ishmael got the blessings. Oops. So they're supplanting that. And then you have later on Esau. Again, they're always trying to get in there and steal the stuff. Always. Yeah.
It's so miraculous because they had that land for thousands of years, and they didn't do anything with it, or was there a problem until the descendants came back to the land? Then it became an issue.
Yeah. That's basically it. Yeah, I would agree with you, David. Especially in recent history, when the Jewish people started coming back after the diaspora, then all of a sudden, and then they had the the gall to set a nation up, then that's when everything hit the fan, and all of a sudden all this became very important. Yes, and it's still that way to this day. So, yeah, Doc.
It is kind of interesting that finally when the Jews came back to the land after all these years, the rains came back and
Yeah.
the land started prospering. So the blessing, even though it was promised a long time ago, wasn't noticed until they've got back into the land. And now they are very fruitful in that area of Israel.
Yeah, and Don knows. He's been over there. He's been harvesting grapes before and done all sorts of stuff. Yeah, Sleepy Paul there, he quietly went with Don too. So several people here have been over there. But yeah, Don and Paul both were able to partake of that revitalization of the land, the produce of it and stuff. All right. In 26, 1 through 5, we read of Yahweh's promise to Yitzhak. What is it, and how does this work with his promises to Abraham? We don't talk about those as much here, which is why I'm bringing this up. We don't have to answer all this perfectly right now, but I want you to start thinking about different parts of Scripture and add them to your priority list. Okay? Just like Genesis 3:15, the seeds warring, seed of the woman, seed of the serpent. Okay? That's really, really important. Jacob and Esau, very important. The promises to Abraham and Yitzhak and Yaakov, very, very important. So I just want you to add them to what you already know is important, because they underlie and grow what we're used to looking at, which is part of that. Okay? Yep. So to Abraham, I've got 3 here. Okay, they're all in Genesis. We went over them not too long ago. Chapter 15, there's 2, and I've got a third one in Genesis chapter 17. Okay? So, and to Abraham in chapter 15, the first one is, let's see. He said, "Look toward heaven and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them." And he said unto him, "So shall thy seed be." And he believed in Yahweh, and he counted it for him righteousness. And he said unto him, "I am Yahweh that brought thee out of the Ur of Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it." So he's giving him the land, and he's giving him the multiplicity of his seed. Okay? In the same day, Yahweh, and this is in 15:18, in the same day Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham, saying, "Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates." Okay, so he's put a little bit more parameters on the land, all the land you see. Okay. And then in 17, Abraham fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Avram, but thy name shall be called Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. So not just many people, but now it's many nations. Okay. And I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. Now, this is an extremely high honor. If you remember when Rebecca was going, her part of that, if I remember right, her parents prayed over her before she went back to marry Isaac. Well, that was one of the things that they had prayed for. It's a great honor. It's a great honor. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Okay? And to Isaac, it's 26, verse 3. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee and bless thee. Yahweh's talking to Yitzhak. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries. And I perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and give unto thy seed all these countries. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Okay? So remember, the moniker of one of the monikers of Yahweh is he's the God of Abraham. Now he's adding the second one, the God of Isaac. He's passing that along. Now, later on, he'll put Jacob. Remember, it's Abraham and Isaac, not Abraham and Ishmael. And it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. Okay? Yeah.
I may be getting ahead here, but how does this tie in to Galatians chapter 3, verse 8, which talks about this promise?
I don't know. How does it?
Well, I'm asking you.
You're right.
You can't double ask.
Why don't you read You're right. It does, actually. Paul talks about these, and I've got a whole list of stuff. Romans, multiple places. Galatians, Ephesians, 1 John, several places. Revelation. Okay, we've got Matthew, Mark, John. We've all got those as well, too. Okay, yes, sir. Why don't you read that verse?
Verse 8 says, and the scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, preached the gospel to Abraham beforehand, saying, in you all the nations shall be blessed. So then those who are of faith are blessed with believing Abraham.
Mm-hmm. Now, some people surmise on this, and I get the point. I get the point. There's actually two blessings here, two pathways that go parallel with each other. Because you could tell, you look up at the stars, he's going to have descendants, okay? In another spot, it's singular. Your seed is going to bless the nations. A lot of people think that's the Messiah. So that would be the gospel message. Yep. Yeah, you see both. Because otherwise you're going, well, you know, today we don't have really all the house of Israel. We have the southern kingdom, so I'll refer to them as Jewish, because that's what they really are. Just like Paul was. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. Benjamin was in the south. Yeah, many people benefit from things from the Jewish people, but it's talking about the Messiah. It's talking about the Messiah there. So it's a dual blessing that came out of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then they got muddled for a while with Jacob, and then Judah. Everybody blew it. And then Judah came back and redeemed himself. And I think that's why the scepter. But the blessing was split between Ephraim and between Judah, the birthright. The first birthright was split between the two boys. It didn't all go to one. One got the resources, the other one got the royalty kingship. They're supposed to go together, but Jacob split them. So Ephraim, Frank wrote a fantastic book on that. Ephraim and Ramona Frank over in Israel. Ephraim wrote a really good book on that. Yeah. He's even on the cover, he's got Jacob with his hands crossed over. It's a really cool book. That directly affects us to this day. Okay? Because remember, one of the, I think it's the last human name you see in the book of Revelation is David. So even there, Yeshua is claiming the right to be king because he's descended from David. And not only that, but the house of David will rule forever. The root of Jesse, the prophecies and all that. That all goes through there. Okay. I did a whole big thing on the children or the sons of God. So we're the children of Abraham, children of God. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there. Well, we're running out of time there. Question 4. In chapter 27, we've talked about this some, so let me just trot through it. We read of Yitzhak blessing Yaakov, then Esau's blessing. What observations do you make about this very interesting and winding narrative? What lessons do you observe that we can apply to our lives today? And then did Rebekah and Jacob do the right or the wrong thing? This is all about the story. In verse 36, we read Esau's assessment of the situation is this accurate, that Esau have justification for his choices. We talked a little bit about D, 4D there. What other lessons can we learn about this? Tim had a really good one. They had the promise. Rebekah had the word from Yahweh, and yet they still tried to work it in, you know. And it didn't stop with Jacob, and then Jacob got paid back what he had been doing by his father-in-law Laban, who I jokingly call the used camel salesman. That guy could sell snow to an Eskimo, so to speak. He could just sell sand to a desert person. I mean, Laban was just conniving and tricky all the way through. Yeah, he just was, definitely was. So in this, but then later on, like he said, they do bless him and they try to get the stuff back on track again when they bless him and send him off to Laban's. So anything else from this story that you guys can think of? I mean, did Rebecca and Isaac do the right thing? Did they do the wrong thing? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Well, here we have the, the similarity, like with Abram and Sarah, where they intervened in a way that God's will was going to be accomplished, and yet man feels like they have to put their hand on God's will to usher it in, and had they just left it alone, God's will would have been accomplished.
I take away on that also. If for some reason the Lord didn't just wipe them all out and say, I'm going to start with somebody new. He still worked with the situation, but they made it so that it happened the hard way and the dishonest way, and they have to repent. And they carry some baggage, you know. They suffer some of the consequences because they went about it the wrong way.
I sympathize with her because sometimes as a wife, when you have to obey your husband and what he says goes. Well, if he says he wants to bless the older one, then that's his choice. So then what do you do? And then I think of Abigail with, what's his name, Nabal. And, well, he said one thing, but she went and did the other one. But there was she saved his life. She saved David from sinning. So there was good in it. What do you do in those positions when your authority figure is doing the wrong thing? What kind of choice do you make?
I know one thing I've learned in those situations is I go back and I beseech the Lord again. I go back and I beseech him again. Always turn to the Lord is what I work very, very hard at doing. I have done it the other way. I don't recommend it. But if that's how you got to learn, then that's how you got to learn. That's right. So I haven't done that big, but I've done it, and it's really not a good idea. I really don't recommend it. Okay? But again, you want to knock yourself out, I'm just going to step back and not get hit by the nuclear weapon when it blows up on you. Yeah, Dave.
There's a saying that the man is the head, but the woman is the neck, and the head
I've
turns
heard
the
that.
direction that the neck points. And I'm flattered by that, because when I think of that passage with Moshe, when God was displeased with Moses that he didn't circumcise his son, and his wife intervened.
Yeah.
And is it that we as the head aren't using our ears, but yet the neck hears better than the head does? Just a thought.
Exactly, because then you have two instances where the wife did not get it right. Job's wife and David's wife. They both got it wrong. But other times, they get it right. And the guy's the one that's left holding the dunce hat, so to speak. Okay? Yeah. So what's the solution to that? Go to the Lord. Go to the Lord. Go to the Lord. Clean the ears. Get the wax out of your ears. Get the cotton out of your ears so you can hear the Lord. Don't have itchy ears, so you want him to tell you what it is you want to hear. You have to be willing to do that, you know. And then he'll say, Lord, am I supposed to do what she say? Yes. I'm glad you finally asked. I've been telling you this for 20 years. Now you got it. And other times it's like, no, stay the course. They're just short of faith. Sarah's another one. Got it wrong. Okay? I just forgot her name. But Ishmael's mom. Yeah, they got it wrong. They got it wrong. But other times, they get it right. So it's welcome to life. I mean, this is part of life. None of us are going to get it right all the time. And yeah, I heard that actually, that saying that you said, David, heard it from an Israeli broadcaster on the air. I'm watching this thing, and she just, I didn't even know she was religious. She's doing the news, and I'm watching the news thing. And then she just pops up and goes, yeah, I know it says the men, the husbands are the head, but we women, we're the neck that turns the head. And I just went, ooh, she enjoyed that too much. What's nice is if we work together. It's not supposed to be an adversarial thing. It's supposed to be working together. Because remember the two natures, Craig, Elizabeth's got it. Then we got one up here too. We're supposed to be, I think, representing two parts of Yahweh. It's supposed to be working together. Okay, yeah.
I think the mistakes that were made by so many people at that time are good examples to us when we've made mistakes that we can be redeemed, that we can come back from those mistakes and live a life that's pleasing to Yahweh, no matter how far we've gone, because they made some pretty bad mistakes. So.
Yep, it's a good point. And then, Craig, we have another hand up here, or Darren. And some of them, those consequences are very long-lasting, and we're still suffering from them today. David's sin with Uriah and Bathsheba, we're still suffering from that today. And Abraham messing up and having Ishmael, we're still suffering from that today. So, but other ones, it seems like they can overcome it and get around it okay. And they did, but we're still suffering the consequences. Yeah.
I was just wondering, I think about the Garden of Eden, and Eve was deceived, but Adam made a choice.
Uh-huh. Yes. That didn't come up when we were covering that part of the Torah portion, but that has always been a big thing. Where was Adam when Eve sinned? Okay. Whether he was there or not, that's the big thing. And then, why did Adam do what he did? You're right. It's very interesting.
Yeah, one thing, that's the thing between Jacob and Esau when we were talking about hearing or listening. Mm-hmm. Jacob listened to, because he was a Torah believer, he believed, just like Abraham believed, you know, and it was counted him as righteousness. But Jacob was a studier of the Torah, and he heard spiritually what Yahweh was telling him. But then Esau, even though he had the birthright to begin with, and he didn't care for it because he had nothing but disrespect. He was a spontaneous, like I said, he was a hunter, and he wanted to do the things that he wanted to do, and he didn't want to listen to anything that Yahweh wanted to tell him. So then what happens? And he's going to miss out on all the blessings, even though Yaakov got the blessings. But I also heard about the lentils, that they're round, that it was supposed to be a mourner's meal that was being prepared. And then when Esau came in and he wanted that porridge, Abraham, his grandfather, was already in the ground, and he was late for everything. Esau was late for everything. He didn't respect Abraham after he passed away, but Yaakov did. And he just, it was totally a bad thing that he wasn't in on with his family, mourning for his grandfather Abraham. And so the lentil is supposed to represent a cycle of life. You know, you start at birth, and you get around, and you live your life, and then it comes to the end. You know, it came around.
Yeah, what goes around comes around. Yeah.
What goes around comes around. Yeah, that was spoken also.
Yeah, what you sow, you reap. Yeah, very good point. Thank you, I appreciate that. What's interesting on this story too is, as I've mentioned, that we're still with the consequences of this. Now, Esau it was called Edom because it means red. Okay, Edom means red. Yeah, he had red. He liked the red porridge. Where he goes and settles in southern Jordan is called Edom, and there's red rock everywhere. That's where Petra is, because Petra just is a Greek word for rock. But there's rock all over the place. There's all tons of places. There's a little Petra. There's all sorts of places. There's other mountain fortresses in the land of Edom, as well as Moab. And I've visited, I think, all of them except for one. Okay, but there's a lot of rocks. But that's Edom. Now later on, it took on the Greek word Idumea. Okay, it's the same place. Idumeans, Herod. King Herod, he's an Idumean. So he's from the land of Edom, which puts him as an arch enemy of Jacob, and yet he was put on as king of the Jews by the Romans, because the Romans knew what they were doing. They always put enemies against each other. Not just them, too. The French and the British did it with the colonies all the time. And Syria is still being ripped apart because of what the French did there, too. But what I wanted to bring up was to compare towards the end here the result of Jacob, who gets renamed Israel, okay, and their capital city is Jerusalem. They get a whole new place. They get all the fantastic blessings, the new Jerusalem, the promised land. Okay, this is where Yahweh resides. They get to live in and cultivate and work with Yahweh's actual land. This is the closest you can get to that since the Garden of Eden. Okay, this is a huge honor. Compare that to Esau's land, Edom, which is also called Edomia. And for that, the best place is in Isaiah chapter 34. It's really the whole chapter, but I'll summarize parts of it. It says in verse 1, "Come near, you nations, to hear and listen, you people. Let the earth hear and all that is in it, the world and its offspring. For the displeasure of Yahweh is against all the nations, and his wrath against all their divisions. He shall put them under the ban, he shall give them over to the slaughter. And their stain shall be thrown out, and the corpses." He's talking about the judgment of the nations at the end of time. Okay? And this is what happens to Edom. Quote, "For my sword," that's Yahweh's sword, "shall be drenched in the heavens. Look, it comes down on Edom and on the people of my curse for judgment." They get the exact opposite of what Israel gets. Okay? "For Yahweh has a slaughtering in Basra," one of the chief cities in Edom. I've been there, it's still there. "And a great slaughter in the land of Edom. Its streams shall be turned into tar, and its dust into sulfur. And the land shall become burning tar that is not quenched night or day. Its smoke going up forever. From generation to generation it lies waste. No one passes through it forever and ever." And it goes on to talk about a few animals live there. It's a horrible place. Okay? That's what happens to Esau, not Israel. You don't. Now, I think individuals from Esau and his tribes, in a sense, by far can be redeemed. We're talking about the nation as a whole. All those individuals, they can be redeemed. And I've seen some of them. I've met some of them. And they love the Lord. And it's so cool. And I've talked to other people about it too over there. Same thing. So we can always get individuals. Okay, but we're talking about the nation as a whole. Okay? And that all sets up right here when Esau despised the birthright. That was the end result, generations down, that he didn't look at, and I agree, he was just kind of the man of the moment thing, of the result of when you reject what God has given you. That has huge consequences for us today. Don't reject what he's given you. He's given you a Messiah. He's given you a Savior. He's given you a masterhood, a king. If you reject that, this is where you're going to go. Sorry, but that's just where it is. Yeshua talked about it all the time. Paul talks about it. It's all through the Messianic scriptures. It's all through the Tanakh. It's not rocket science. There's no hidden answers here. It's life or death, really. Satan always represents death. Lord always is life, Okay? So I want to encourage you guys when you're going through these things. Some very good points here. One, try not, if you have a good prophecy, try not to take matters into your own hands. It really, hopefully you will only suffer a little and then get redeemed. Otherwise, you can have consequences for people you don't even know. Okay? And then the second one is follow the Lord. Follow the Lord. Follow the Lord. Okay? You guys are fantastic. I heard some great answers. I can tell a lot of you are studying on your own, which is what I really want you to do. Okay? I'm getting older. I can't be here forever. I need to raise up other people to be teachers. Very important. Very important. I'm doing that by the people who taught me when I was a little boy in grammar school, in church. They're all passed on. So if I hadn't taken this up, along with other people in my generation, then it would die out. So we need to get this for the next generation, if the Lord tarries. All right. Thank you, everybody, so very much. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back for second service.